We have Neil deGrasse Tyson in the news. Apparently, he's coming out with a new book called Take Me to Your Leader Perspectives on Your First Alien Encounter by Neil deGrasse Tyson. Hmm, I definitely have some thoughts about this. Um, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, in my opinion, he's a smart person. He went to school, studied, astrophysics, physics, or you know, he's a pretty smart guy. But him and a lot of so-called experts, they're usually people who are just out and about, going on TV shows, news broadcasts, what have you, and sort of they've become this sort of face of science. Whenever there's some fantastical news or anything like that, they're always the ones to people call upon their opinions of like, oh, what do you think about this? Like Bill Nye, the science guy, and Michio Kaku and all that stuff. But Neil deGrasse Tyson has always been someone who's always been so against the idea of, UFOs, little green men coming to visit us, or even the idea that Oumuamua was possibly a, you know, sort of like a probe of some kind, maybe a spaceship that's just kind of lost power, it's in stasis or some kind, just kind of drifting, in the solar system, out in the universe. Ideas of, aliens coming to visit us. It's always been something that he's been so against. And he laughs it off so, you know, like very direct, like, no, impossible. Give me proof of, you know, alien bodies. I want to see the spaceship, all that stuff. Even, scuffing away of the testimonies from Air Force pilots, all the information of, from the testimonies of a lot of U.S. officials, politicians, so much information that has been out there for so long. And somehow he always seems to just like, nope, that's not possible. But now all of a sudden he's writing a book about Take Me to Your Leader. No, I don't know what the book is going to be about. I want to assume that it's not going to be something where we're like, oh my god, he's finally taking the matter of the UFO phenomena a little bit more seriously. He's looking into it as a scientist should. A scientist should always go with the idea of, well, I don't know what that is. I don't know what it could be, but I'm definitely going to try to find out. If you have thousands and thousands of reports of supposedly something that's flying in the sky, you would imagine a normal, level-headed scientist would be like, I'm gonna go and find out what that is, instead of just like, nah, impossible, because of our understanding of our science dictates that it would be impossible for an alien civilization to even travel to our planet at light speed. It's remotely impossible. There's no possible way. They would die by the time they get here. And, they just go on this little tangent of how it's not possible. We would know if there was alien life out there. We would know that if there was intelligent life, we would have detected it, which most scientists would say. But with Neil deGrasse Tyson and this book coming out, I honestly feel he's just sort of like, it's almost like he's trying to mock the UFO community, this disclosure movement. And this book is just, I feel like it's some sort of like, I don't know, like sort of like a little jab and sort of I don't even think it's even be that serious. Like, what would the book be about? It's literally, the title is like "Take Me to Your Leader." What would he even talk about? You know. So I don't know what this could be. But yeah, a lot of people are pointing that supposedly he's switching sides, which I don't think. If anything, it's just more of a publicity stunt. Neil deGrasse Tyson at this point, I don't know what he even has published as far as papers. I don't even consider him an actual scientist. He has degrees, he has, knowledge, but as a scientist, you would be studying, you would be working on the fields that you've been working, actually publishing papers and doing real work. Instead, he's just writing books. I don't even think he's writing his own books. I'm pretty sure he has other people writing his books. And then he goes on TV shows, radios. He is basically just an entertainer at this point, not a real scientist. And so I don't know how much weight his input really matters at this point of time. In this day and age of, the internet, social media, everything about how we about about how much we can trust, the establishments. And especially Neil deGrasse, who's part of this machine of this. I have to imagine it's some sort of propaganda, from the media companies about pushing this narrative of like, UFOs are not real. It's impossible. You're crazy. Conspiracy theorist. Tinfoil hat. All that stuff. Laugh it off and, chuckle when you hear that someone saw a UFO, or, he's part of that sort of establishment of pushing a certain narrative to manipulate the minds of the people. And I feel like that's what Neil deGrasse Tyson has always been in my eyes, is someone who is trying to make sure that these ideas are ridiculed and not taken seriously. Because if he, at the heart of it, as a true scientist, as a human being who often wonders of our place in the universe, I've heard him say stories about when he was young, about how he would he be in awe of the universe and all that. So the curiosity of like what's out there. So it's like, where does that go? How does that like not go into the idea of like aliens and stuff? We've been so manipulated and brainwashed, into thinking that this cannot be a possible thing, that aliens could not visit our planet. Most of the sci-fi shows, movies, everything, all those ideas, they all stem from tales and stories that come from way older times, angels, fairies, whatever, dragons, something fiery, booming sound that's coming from the sky. You can go back to all the stories of the Sumerian texts, stories in the Bible, Chinese mythology, all the way to the, Vimanas and Hinduism and Hindu culture and all that. These ideas go as far as human history, as far as we can remember, about things that come from the skies. Stories that don't just come out of nowhere. They have meaning. There's some truth to it. I know it in my heart. And I know that in this day and age where The manipulation of the mind is at an all-time high. There's definitely danger in falling into the wrong mindset. You can't trust anybody. And I mean anybody. Not me, not whoever you listen to. You just don't know. You only have to make sure that you use your own logic. Do your own research. We have to be very careful about the things that we see, read, and hear. Because now more than ever, the fight for our very minds, it's at an all-time high. There's a real war happening. I don't know what that leads to, but there's a real war, and between good and evil. And we have to always make sure that we're just aware enough to realize what is really truth to us. Because at the end of the day, I could tell you anything I can tell you, but that doesn't mean what I say is right. That's why it's always important to follow your instincts, be logical. And what I will say about the whole disclosure movement that's been happening is that, yes, it's a good thing that we are finally getting disclosure. And this disclosure is more for the common people. It's not for the hardcore people like us who've been following this since we were kids, probably. But there is a movement happening and there is disclosure. But we also have to be very careful about how that disclosure or what information is being fed to us. The truth may be manipulated to a certain way that could be used against us, and we have to be very careful. We all know about the supposed plans that, have been in place for many decades, we had the Cold War, all the many wars that have come and passed, 9/11, 9/11 will cause, all those restrictions, that all those laws that passed, laws that allowed certain agencies to spy on us, to hear everything we say using our phones, looking through our webcams, listening to every conversation. Now we had the pandemic 6 years ago. Laws were passed, things happened behind the scenes. And I know something else will happen as well. Whatever it is, we have to be careful. And I know that we have to be appreciative of the disclosure that's happening. It may not be all at once, or it may not be something amazing or groundbreaking as like, hey, these are the aliens, this is what we know about them, this is what they look like, this is the ship, this is the planet or star system that we might think they're from, information like that. But the truth is being revealed, it slowly, or their sort of version of it. But we have to be aware that it might not be the truth. It might be a version of the truth, but it's a truth that might be used against us to manipulate us. There's all those talks about how the government is going to create a fake alien invasion. Who knows? That might be a real thing. And right now we're laughing about it like, why would such a thing ever happen? It would be impossible. Imagine the panic. Well, I don't know. We laugh about how AI would sort of been a century away from us, decades and stuff, robots and self-driving cars, but yet here we are, more closer than ever to that matrix universe of, having machines, artificial intelligence, virtual reality. We're already in a paradigm shift already. We've already been accustomed to certain realities already. An alien invasion wouldn't be such a big step forward. It would be, in terms of like, my god, there's actual aliens flying in our skies, but we would adjust, we would adapt, it would be normalized, just like everything else. But I think I made this video a little too long than I should have. But my whole point of my thoughts of was, going back to Neil deGrasse Tyson, is that whatever he says or whatever he's going to say in his book, it's just take it with a grain of salt. Do your own research. Even the people that you think are revealing the truth to you about certain information, they may be pawns of a greater system that's manipulating the UFO truth, the alien truth, whatever you want to call it. It may not be the way you think it is, and I don't know that. This is just my thoughts, and I'm just basically just speaking out of my ass into the ether. But yeah, these are interesting times indeed. Either way, thank you for listening. Hope you have a great day.